Many of us have heard that being lazy is a bad thing, that it's something that we need to stop doing and try to get ourselves out of as quickly as possible if we are experiencing it. But what if that's actually not the case? On today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, that is the exact question that we're exploring with none other than Dave Asprey as we discuss his new book, Smarter, Not Harder. We're going to cue the introduction and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we will be breaking down the strategies and tactics you need to know to build your health, strength, and function without feeling achy, sore, or injured.
We're your hosts, Julie and Charlie, the creators of the Exercise for Life membership. Your podcast starts now.
Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing this topic, among other things, laziness. Honestly, this is a wide discussion that we are going to be having today, not just about this idea of laziness, but about so many other beliefs that we have about our bodies, about our health, and like what it actually means to be healthy. And the reason why this discussion is so far reaching and encompasses so much is because we have an exclusive interview with none other than Dave Asprey. Yes, that's right. The father of biohacking sits down with us to discuss his brand new book, Smarter, Not Harder. And so we are exploring a whole bunch of topics that are brought up in this book. So if you don't know Dave Asprey, he is the creator of Bulletproof Coffee and the founder of the Bulletproof Company. A New York Times bestselling author, he hosts the top 100 podcast, The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey, and has been featured in Men's Health, Wired, and Vogue, and on the Joe Rogan Experience, CNN, and hundreds of other outlets. Called the father of biohacking, Dave has spent the last 2 decades working alongside world-renowned doctors and thought leaders to unlock new levels of human potential. And he lives in Austin, Texas. Dave, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our show.
You know, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. So, what I really want to kick off with is you have written so many highly acclaimed books in the past. What did you feel like you haven't said yet that caused you to be like, yeah, I need to write a whole other book?
That is something that not a lot of people recognize. Writing a book is a huge investment of time and energy, and it's not one that pays very well. People always think, oh, these authors are just selling books. I think I might make something like $1.10 per book sold. And, a really successful book might sell 100,000 copies.
Sure.
I started a company that does $100 million a year in revenue, and I have 8 other companies in my portfolio. I promise you that I don't write books for money.
Right.
I write books because it's something that I haven't seen anywhere else. In a form that I think will help people. And also it helps me to crystallize my own understanding of reality. So I get the benefit of doing the work, and people who read it or listen to it quite often because they know my voice from my show, they're getting the benefit of structured knowledge that they can absorb versus just kind of, rambling about it. What I haven't really said is that when I was 23 and I weighed 300 pounds. I had 100 pounds of fat. As we're talking today, I'm 8% body fat and I weigh about 200 pounds. Well, I went to the gym for 702 hours. I did a 90-minute day, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And I didn't miss a day. Even when I was really sick, even if I had, job interviews or I was finishing up college, it didn't matter. I just went. It was my highest priority because I didn't want another knee surgery. I didn't want to be fat anymore. And I went on a low-fat, low-calorie diet. And at the end of that 18 months, you think I'd look good, right? I still had a 46-inch waist. I still weighed 300 pounds, even though I could max out all but 2 of the machines at the gym. And I thought to myself at Carl's Jr., my friends are eating double Western bacon cheeseburgers and fries. I'm eating the chicken salad with no dressing. Oh, and no chicken because there's too many calories. I'm starving myself. I'm just like gnawing hungry all the time because I have my willpower and this is my highest priority in life. Never worked. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm just eating too much lettuce. But then I thought, wait a minute. I work out more than all my friends combined. And I still weigh more than all my friends combined. Okay, not really. But they didn't exercise and they ate a ton. And it's not that I was failing to do it. It's that doing it was failing. So Smarter, Not Harder is kind of my revenge on the exercise myth, on those mean bullies who grow up and have those websites and those social media pages that say, it's calories in, calories out. All you have to do is drink a Diet Coke after you eat a Snickers bar and your average calories is just fine and they're all the same. Those douchebags spent 702 hours of my time believing their nonsense. I've also been a raw vegan. I've been a regular vegan. I've been a vegetarian. And I've been keto back when we called it the Atkins diet. And I was one of the leading voices in cyclical keto. That's why the Bulletproof Diet helped people lose 2 million pounds. So I've been through all this, but there was a couple things that needed to be said. One of them was hurry, meditate faster. And the other one was you're wasting time in the gym. Right now, there are $400 million a year of ghost gym memberships where people pay the money and they never go. It's not because we're dumb. It's because our bodies know better than we do. They're wired to do certain things. So I'm introducing the idea in Smarter, Not Harder that there is an operating system in your body. And I prove with math and science exactly how fast it is and where it sits and the kind of decisions it makes and how you take credit for those and how it's controlling you unless you control it. And then there's some new techniques, things we never knew about. Not really about food. There's a little bit about foods that cause too much resistance to change. But the main things are, how do I just get a signal to make my body do what I want? This is the book about hacking your body. And there's 5 things people are asking for. When you go to the gym, usually it's, I want to get stronger or faster. But if you're walking down the street and someone says, hey, do you want to be healthy? Most of us will think about it. Yeah, I want to be healthy. But when you woke up this morning, was health the top thing on your list? I don't know. What do you think, Charlie? First thing this morning.
For most people, definitely not.
What about for you?
For me, I'm thinking about, so health is very near and dear to me. So being a type 1 diabetic, I wake up in the morning and the first thing that comes to my mind is like, all right, what's the status of my body? What do I need to do to either maintain or regulate that, right? But I'm not most people. And so I've kind of structured my life in order to be able to do that.
I love your answer, because the only people who say health is their number one goal are really sick people. And you're not really sick anymore, but you have a condition that means if health isn't your number one goal, you'll die. I mean, like that's the reality. If you don't control your blood sugar today, it can be fatal. Right. So for you, the answer is yes. And for me, when I had chronic fatigue syndrome and I was so weak. I just wanted to be healthy. It was my top, more than I wanted, to have sex or eat a cheeseburger but that's only a few people. For the vast majority of us, when we say healthy, we mean totally different things. So 8 years ago, I opened the first biohacking center on earth underneath Arnold Schwarzenegger's office in Santa Monica, California. And it's called Upgrade Labs. And today we're opening them across the country. You can franchise one. It's at ownandupgradelabs.com. And what I found there was that when these Hollywood people and executives and the kind of Santa Monica crowd, the healthy people would come in, they were asking for 5 big groups of things. And they're actually conflicting sometimes. So some people want to be smarter. Some people want more muscle mass. They want to be stronger. Some people want more cardiovascular fitness. They want to be faster. Some people just want to manage stress better. In fact, that's for the first time, people want that more than weight loss. And the other people want either weight loss or better energy. And those are always the same things. They go together. So that's what people are asking for. But for you, you want a unique combination of these 5 things. And for me, I want my own. And in the book, I'm like, let's be honest about this. Since this is what most people want, it's not the same. What we've been doing for exercise, which is supposed to be healthy, is we pick up rocks. The big innovation there is we concentrated the rocks into iron. And now that's our big innovation, the last 500 years of exercise. Or we run away from tigers. And what we do now, that's a big innovation. Now we can run away, but stay in one place. And that's what a treadmill or exercise, that's it. Right. And that's kind of sad. So I want my 702 hours in the gym back, Charlie, because the return on investment of time was terrible because I didn't know how to get a signal into the body. That's why Smarter Not Harder is such an important book, because if I can help you figure out what your number one goal is and your number two goal is, then you'll know exactly which of the techniques or technologies or methods that are in the book, some of which work 12 times better than what you're doing today. That's pretty powerful. So the idea is, I don't want you to do everything I'm talking about. I just want you to know the thing that's going to get you to your goal the fastest. And when it frees up 5 hours a week of time, maybe you'll use that 5 hours to improve your brain, to do the last couple of chapters where I talk about more rapid spiritual progression, or maybe you'll use them on your relationships, or maybe to get a relationship, or to do other things that matter in your world. So I think we're just wasting a ton of time doing futile things at the gym that barely work. And that pisses me off. And even worse, I see this in men and women, but it's probably worse in women. I see people who use their willpower all the way up. They wear it down to a nub because not only are they exercising at the gym in a way that doesn't work very well, they cut their energy and their calories and they go plant-based. And suddenly now they're not just grinding themselves down to a nub, they're digging a hole because they've ruined their body's system for detecting food. And they've created nutrient deficiencies, and they're actually harming their fertility. They're harming their hormones. They're harming their ability to show up and not be reactive in the world. I've done all of these things to myself, and I'm incredibly fortunate that I know what I know, and I've interviewed 1,000+ experts and become one. And you can do it. It's not that much work if you just have the right tool. So I'm a little bit, I don't live and operate from a state of like revenge or bitterness or angriness. I've done all my healing work on that stuff. But there is some sort of low level sense of, paying back that time. Like I shouldn't have done that. It would have been so much better for me if I would have maybe taken a class on how to date when I was 23.
Well, Dave, one thing that I really appreciated in the book was how neatly you kind of laid out everything that you just talked about, but from like an instant kind of like practicality standpoint with the charts, and it'd be like, hey, if this is your goal, these are the things to focus on. These are your, and so for the listeners, just know that like when you get this book, not only is it a very straightforward read, but to grasp the practicality, it's right there. I also really appreciated the idea of this Meat OS, as you call it, this operating system within our body that is designed to help us survive, but isn't necessarily designed to help us do the things that we need to do in order to be able to have more energy, have more strength, live with more vibrance. And so you talk about like, hey, if you're feeling like you're not wanting to do those things, it's not your fault. You're not necessarily designed to want to do those things, but there are some things that you can do to make that process easier.
Let's talk about laziness. I've been saying it for years, but I never really thought about it. The reason I'm so successful, and I feel kind of dumb saying that. I'm not one of those, hey, everybody look at me kind of guys. Although I'll do that to talk about my new coffee company or something. It's just not natural for me. I was a 300-pound computer hacker. Like that's my natural thing. But I have built a $100 million a year company from scratch, and 300 million downloads on the podcast, all these New York Times bestselling books, and all this stuff. So I've been phenomenally successful. And you can say that's because you're a hard worker, you have grit, and you grind yourself down. And I did do that before I was 30. I admit to that. It was dumb, but it worked, and it made me profoundly unhappy and unhealthy. So the reason I can do these things is because I'm lazier than you are. And laziness is not a bad thing. And we've learned because of parenting and society and churches and whatever, that if you don't want to work, that means you're lazy and it means you're bad and you should be ashamed. And so we internalize that work. In fact, a lot of people have a voice in their head that men and women have this voice, you're bad, you're not enough, shame on you. You should want to go to the gym. You have an operating system in your body that knows very well that going to the gym is dumb. And that if you could avoid going to the gym, you would avoid going. And it wins to convince you that sometimes. Well, let me ask you this, Charlie. If you could, in 1 minute, for $1, replace the next year's worth of going to the gym and get all the results, would you do that?
Absolutely.
That means you're a lazy, bad person. You should be very ashamed. But this is how our operating, this is the voice in our head.
Sure.
Now, all of us would take that. So why the hell are we doing hard things on purpose that don't provide very many results? What I'm teaching in Smarter Not Harder is, hey, here's some hard things you could do that don't take very much time and effort. They give you so many more results, you'll probably do them, because that little meat operating system is like, oh, the juice was worth the squeeze for that one. But going to the spin class where someone in spandex yells at you in a high-pitched voice while they play some kind of pop and goes, you can do it, spin! Rah! Like, I would rather gouge my eyes out than do that. And my operating system knows that, and it just steers me clear of those. Right? And no offense, if you love going to those because you have community, I actually respect that. Your operating system is not my operating system. There are people who love that, and like full respect. And there's all kinds of community reasons people like spin classes. I'm just going to tell you, if you do a spin class 5 days a week, which is a lot, and you do it for an hour a day, that's, you know, nice heavy spin class. So you're going to be toasted after that. After 2 months of that, most people will quit before 2 months, but let's say that you don't quit, you will have a 2% improvement in your cardiovascular capacity. It's called your VO2 max.
Yeah.
Okay. Still 2% is not bad.
It's not bad, but
if you do what's in the book, in Smarter Not Harder, I'm like, hey, here's a new technology that no one knew about until a couple of years ago that sends a different signal into your body. And that's going to take you 5 minutes 3 times a week, and you don't ever break a sweat. And oh, you do that. Okay, most of us can do 5 minutes 3 times a week.
Sure.
12% improvement in VO2 max. It is 6 times better results in like 5 minutes of not sweating 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Now, how many times have you said, I'm going to do something productive tonight, and you ended up on the couch watching Netflix? At least 3 times, right? Yeah, me too.
At least.
At least, right? So I wonder why that happens. Right? It happens because the system in your body that says conserve calories, it's not messing around, and sometimes you listen to it.
Sure.
That's the same system that's going to tell you not to go to the spin class or the gym every single day. And what we do is we say, you know what? Like I did. I am a strong, good person. I'm going to build a habit. Like BJ Fogg has been on my show talking about habit formation, and it's amazing. You can program your operating system to run a recurrent habit without thinking about it, and it'll do things it doesn't want to do. So most of us say, all right, I'm going to just make the habit of going to the gym every day and not eating every day, right? Or eating, you know, plant foods and beyond whatever, beyond impossible. And what you end up with is a body that's chronically thinking it's being hunted. And that there's also a famine because you're eating this nonsense food that doesn't contain real food. A body that never has a time or a chance or materials to repair itself, yet is constantly being hunted, becomes gaunt and lean. And then you don't sleep well. This happens to women before men, but it happens to all of us. So first you lose your sleep. With women, their monthly cycle becomes less stable. Their fertility drops. With men, we wake up without a kickstand. And if we keep doing this, because we're good people and we have habits and willpower, then you start shedding hair because your cortisol levels go up. And this is surprisingly more common in women, but it's happening more and more in men. It's because you cut your calories so far, you can't lose weight. Now, right now, the 5 people who are still left, most of whom were bullied or just not loved by their mothers, they're still online going, calories in, calories out. Don't you know Newton's law of blah, blah, blah. It's nonsense. That's not how it works. Those are the people who tricked me into working out for 702 hours while being hungry all the time. And because I've helped hundreds of thousands of people lose weight, I interact with a lot of them. And so many of them say the same thing, especially women. You know, when I cut my workouts to a couple times a week and I started eating more, especially more animal protein, I lost weight. Like, this is supposed to be impossible in that online troll-based way of arguing about calories. It's just not how it works. So I was deceived by that belief system. And it's funny, the most profitable businesses on the planet, they have a business of selling you something to solve a problem, but the thing they sell causes the problem. I'm talking about diet soda right now. It's the best business ever. It's like printing money. Like, hey guys, if you drink diet soda, it'll make you thin. So then fat people like me who drank 17 cans a day, you just drink it, but it actually makes you fatter and it makes you want more sugar. So you're just like, I just built a business model for life. Imagine what would happen if it was, hey, plant-based food. Yeah, that'll fill you up. Sure. And you spend more for something that costs less. So it's highly profitable. And it makes you hungry a half hour after you eat it. And then like, hey, come to the gym. Yeah, it'll work. You'll lose weight. Why do people spend that $400 million a year and not even go to the gym? Because they believe going to the gym makes them thin and fat. It doesn't. You lose weight from what's on your plate. You improve the electrical performance of your body by going to the gym. You can look great without going to the gym as long as you eat right. If you eat reasonably right and occasionally go to the gym, maybe 15 minutes a week is my habit, you can have 8% body fat. I have been in Men's Health with my shirt off as a former 300-pound computer hacker. And they didn't tell me I was going to take my shirt off. I didn't get to do the starving, prepping, taking diuretics and spray tans and all that nonsense. It was just one of those, you want me to take my shirt off? What? Like, I still have some body issues here too. Like I have stretch marks. So anyhow, I just want everyone listening, get 5 hours a week back. Or if you're like most people, you aren't spending 5 hours a week in the gym. That's okay. You're not a bad person. You're just doing what your body was designed to do. So send a signal that causes rapid change and then enjoy the benefits of the rapid change and take that extra time and use it to have sex.
I love it. Now, I love it. All right. So one thing that you did bring up in the book that I thought was different than your other books was the heavy emphasis early on the importance of vitamins and minerals and kind of having those base substances to give your body the signals. You talked a lot about minerals, and then you talked about vitamin Dake. And so I would like you to be able to touch on both.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you asked about that, because those are the least sexy things to write about. So I am well known for writing about prescription cognitive enhancing drugs, the limitless pill, modafinil. I was on ABC Nightline. I was the only guy who wouldn't put a bag on my head and said, yeah, I got through business school because I was taking like cheating pills for my brain. And I've even formulated some nootropics, but those aren't going to work. And neither is exercise. And neither is willpower. If when you get a signal into your body to do something, there isn't the raw materials necessary to do it. Right? It's sort of like, yeah, I have a factory and the factory is supposed to make Teslas, but it doesn't have any microchips. It will not make Teslas because one thing is lacking. And the thing that's lacking is actually not sexy. It's minerals. Like what? Minerals, vitamins, minerals. That's 1950s nutritional research. But most of us have heard about zinc because over the last 3 years of government madness, what we all learned was that taking zinc seems to reduce your odds of all kinds of infections, which it actually does in studies. That's because we're all zinc deficient. Why are we all zinc deficient? It's because the food we eat doesn't have zinc in it anymore. It used to have zinc in it, but we have made our soil zinc deficient by growing crops in it all the time. The way we used to have healthy soil was it would get flooded with silt on the Nile. Okay, that's kind of out of fashion for a lot of reasons. But what we do in the meantime is we have animals poop on the soil. And it's animal poop that makes healthy soil. So unfortunately, we have destroyed our soil, so our food doesn't have minerals in it the way it used to. We also stopped eating rock salt. The number one source of protein in the US was salted cod a couple hundred years ago. So we'd catch all this fish, pack it in salt, and you would eat 20 grams of sodium a day. And magically, they didn't have high blood pressure from it either. So weird. Maybe sodium doesn't cause blood pressure. Just saying, guys. But they also got a ton of trace minerals. The original trading routes around the world were to move salt. There were salt trading routes because salt is such an important source of trace minerals in and of itself. So we cut that out of our diet and we eat iodized salt, and there's no minerals in our food. And on top of that, we started eating peasant foods. Back in the Roman times, gladiators were slaves. And the other name for gladiators was barleymen, because they fed the slaves barley because they were going to die soon. Not because barley was a health food. And the peasants ate gruel. You know what gruel is?
Probably like oatmeal or something like that.
It's oatmeal without the marketing.
Fair.
And I mean, people don't know this, but cornflakes, Kellogg's cornflakes. Do you know where Kellogg's comes from? You ever hear the story?
No.
It's going to blow your mind. And this is absolutely verifiable historical fact. Dr. Kellogg was a nut job. He believed in aggressive enemas for everyone. Maybe 9 or 10 a day, and he did that to his kids. He believed that Sexual desire in men was the root of all evil. So he set about making a food that would reduce sexual desire in men. It's called cornflakes.
What?
Cornflakes drop your testosterone. Now, you can look this up. You can't make this up.
Wow.
The reason that everyone gets circumcised in the US is because he said circumcision reduced masturbation. This was a whacker, just like a bad person.
Mm.
And he set food dogma 100 years ago, and we still believe it. So you're going to have a healthy breakfast of cornflakes or rice cakes. You know what both of those have in them? There's something called phytic acid. This is an anti-nutrient. I wrote about it in the Bulletproof Diet, but since that time, I also wrote about lectins. So lectins have had their moment of time where they actually matter. Dr. Gundry's done a great job on that. Oxalic acid in kale and spinach steals minerals from your body and gives you kidney stones and gout. So all these poor vegans like I was, who are getting kidney stones and gout and all these other weird GI issues because they're eating a huge amount of oxalic acid in their nuts and their kale and their spinach and all the other weird stuff that wasn't meant to be food except during a famine. Well, they're doing it, but then we're getting the grains, especially cornflakes and rice cakes, not necessarily steamed rice. Phytic acid sucks minerals out of your body. It gives you weak bones. It means that you cannot absorb the zinc in the supplement you just paid for. So we're eating a ton of foods that we never used to eat unless we were really, really poor. And we're eating those as if they're healthy. They're sucking minerals out of our body. At the same time, we stopped putting minerals into our body. And it's created a crisis where we don't have enough materials for our cells to make energy, our cells to become young, to repair themselves, to make neurotransmitters. And we have a crisis of anxiety. And a lot of the anxiety in the world right now is because your body is malnourished and it feels anxiety in its operating system and it feeds you the anxiety. And then you think it's your boss, your spouse, the social media troll. I don't know what it is, but the anxiety was not the story you told yourself. The anxiety is coming from the state of your tissues. And the two things you need a multi-mineral supplement and you need trace minerals. My newest coffee company is called Danger Coffee. You go to dangercoffee.com. That coffee has a very large dose of trace minerals built in, and it makes the coffee just feel like you want to drink it. You can't taste it, but it's a big difference.
That's cool.
So give that a try. Build it into a habit you already do. There's no extra work to do that.
Sure.
And even if you don't do that, get a multi-mineral supplement. It's going to really be beneficial. It's cheap. It's not sexy, but you need to do it. And if you have minerals and you stop eating oatmeal and gruel, well, you still need to have vitamin Dake. This is Dake. That's something that I make at Upgrade Labs, but it's something you can get online in various forms. And this is vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K, and vitamin E. Fat-soluble vitamins that only come from animals, with the exception of vitamin E. So vegetarian or plant-based vitamin A is actually not the same thing. It doesn't work. But if you take the animal-based ones, that's what tells the minerals to go into your cells and stay there. If you take calcium and you don't take, or even if you take calcium and vitamin D, but you don't take vitamin K, the calcium will go into your arteries. But if you take calcium and you take D and K and A and E, then the calcium will go where it's supposed to go, not in your arteries, it'll go in your bones. You probably don't need calcium, by the way, but I talk about that in the book.
Yeah. So, at least here, like in the northern Midwest, taking vitamin D, especially during the winter months, is a really big thing. But I don't know that people are as familiar with A, K, and E. So my question is there a risk to just taking the vitamin D without the A, K, and E? Okay. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So since I wrote my first blog post, and even 10 years before that, when I was running an anti-aging nonprofit, we were one of the biggest voices probably in the country about the importance of vitamin D3 because we're so low on it. So vitamin D3 by itself is better than not having vitamin D3. But when you take vitamin D3 and you don't take vitamin K2, then what tends to happen is it drives calcification of scars, calcification of other tissues. You'll still have lower overall mortality in lots and lots of studies. You're less likely to get sick. You're still benefiting from it. But if you were to switch to taking vitamin Dake, and that may be a couple bottles, unless you're getting the stuff that I'm doing with Upgrade Labs. I don't think it's even launched yet, but it will be soon. But the point here is, if you take vitamin A and vitamin D3, they actually work in partnership. So A blocks some of D, D blocks some of A, but then your body will get the right minerals in the right places. K2 ensures calcium stays in your bones. and that it goes there. And vitamin D3 makes sure that at least calcium enters the bones. So it's a very delicate dance. And I just realized so many people don't get their minerals. And if they do get their minerals, they're deficient in vitamin D and all of the other fat solubles. So we're talking about a multi-mineral pill is going to be about 3 pills a day. And vitamin Dake is 1 pill a day.
Okay.
Or maybe it's 2 or 3 if you're buying from, one vitamin A, 1 vitamin D.
Sure.
And so these are more important than your, multivitamin, I would say.
Wow.
It's not foundational. If you do that, your thinking will work better. Your muscle production will work better. Your testosterone, all of the things your body has to do require those minerals. And if you're low on those, it doesn't matter how hard you try. It's like, I wanted to build a skyscraper. I didn't have any bricks. So I wanted really hard. And I jumped up and down and I screamed for bricks. But until you had the bricks, you didn't build a skyscraper. It's the same thing in your body. Your body is anxious right now because it doesn't have the basics to do what it wants to do.
So with you in your progression of things, when you were like upgrading your own meat OS, at what point did the vitamins and minerals really become a big thing for you versus saying, bulletproof coffee, putting the fat in the coffee and everything like that?
I have been taking, I'll just say fistfuls, at least 50 supplements a day for 25 years.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that I started in my mid-20s once I discovered smart drugs. Oh my God, I can make my brain work again. I started working with people 3 times my age who were running one of the first anti-aging nonprofit groups in the country. Back when if you said you were interested in anti-aging, they just thought you were nuts. Like they would remove your tenure in a college if you said you were trying to make aging into a disease to fix.
Oh, wow.
So this was just early thought leadership stuff in Palo Alto, a couple minutes from Stanford's campus. And I learned from my elders how important this stuff was. So I took a bunch of vitamins and I brought my minerals back, but I also tried the raw vegan diet that depleted my minerals despite the supplements because of that phytic acid. I cracked 2 different teeth. They just cracked from eating normal foods because I had lost density in my minerals or in my bones. I discovered and created the bulletproof diet. What you're getting from grass-fed butter is vitamin K2. And I've been telling people to take vitamin D3 forever. And I've been telling people to eat grass-fed meat forever and saying liver supplements even help fertility. And my first book was on fertility. It's called The Better Baby Book. So these have been part of my life forever, but I was able to still harm myself with a plant-based diet. And the plant-based diet is the other reason I wrote, this is only 2 chapters of the book. It's on minerals. The rest of this is on techniques for these other things. But it just deserves saying because so many good-hearted people are deciding, oh, I heard somewhere that going plant-based was magically going to help me be healthy or help the planet. It doesn't do either one of those. It's the worst con job I've ever seen nutritionally. It's worse than margarine. And, these hydrogenated oils they told us were healthy. Meanwhile, they were just punching us in the liver the entire time. So I just had to say something about it because I'm seeing more and more deficiency than I've ever seen before because people are saying instead of eating a mineral-rich thing that has iron, it's called a burger. And they're saying, I'm eating this whatever burger. There's nothing good in there. And there's stuff that sucks bad things or sucks good things out of your body. So stop. Put food in your body. I had to say.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a real mind shift for so many people because we think of vitamins and minerals as coming from the plants, as coming from, our vegetables, as coming from our fruits. And so that being our source and, I'm not going to take the supplements. I'm just going to get it all from my food. And what you're saying is actually the foods that you're eating that you think are going to be providing your body with those things are actually depleting your body of those things.
So some of them are, and others just don't contain them the way you think they do. As an example, everyone knows spinach is rich in iron, right?
That's what we're told.
Yeah, well, the iron in spinach is 1.7% absorbable.
Ooh.
In other words, the iron's in there, but your body can't use it because spinach is full of oxalic acid. So maybe you should eat the steak. And if you really want the spinach, you should make it the way your grandmother did with milk, which itself can be problematic. Milk is full of calcium. Calcium will stick to the oxalic acid. Then the razor sharp crystals are formed and you just have to eat them, and then it might damage your gut a bit, but that's manageable for most people. But if they form in your blood and they circulate the razor sharp crystals into your vulva, you will have vulvodynia. And if they go into your joints, you will have gout. And then you eat another spinach salad thinking that it's going to help you. And meanwhile, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And then someone tells you, oh, gout's caused by eating meat. So then you stop eating meat and you eat even more spinach. Gout is caused by eating fructose and by eating things like kale and spinach and rhubarb and nuts and seeds that are full of oxalic acid. Those are the two causes of gout. So you're doing it wrong when you go plant-based. Plant-based diets are what you eat when there's no meat. They are survival diets for times of famine. And some plants are good for you, and herbs and spices are where all the antioxidants and polyphenols and minerals are. So eat more oregano. Enjoy the steak and eggs. You will be a more powerful, leaner, faster, smarter person. And have some broccoli with it. That's totally fine. You know, have a piece of fruit. It's totally fine. But the fruit wasn't the hero on your plate. It was the dessert.
Sure.
And something else happens too. And I've run into this over and over. People say, well, I believe, I don't know why they believe this. Like, who programmed you to believe that? Because you clearly didn't think about it. But I believe that I should get all of my nutrients from Mother Nature. Okay. So a lot of people are nodding. Well, if that is your belief, shouldn't the corresponding belief also be, I get all of my toxins from Mother Nature and all of my stress from Mother Nature too? Because if it's such a great system, okay, you need to move into a cave where there's no EMF and there's no persistent organic pollutants messing with your hormones and no toxic metal in the rain from all the coal we're burning. And once you get there, you need to not have any contact with normal people that will piss you off because you only had contact with 150 people in your tribe. Now you should get all of your nutrients from Mother Nature. Oh, and everything you eat should be wild caught, no farming. Okay. Yes. If you can do that, I support your position. Otherwise, you are swimming in a heap of garbage that our ancestors put on the planet. Our toxin levels and our stressors are higher than natural. Your nutrient needs are higher than you can get from food, unless you're going to eat absurd amounts of organ meats. And even if you do that, you're going to get so many purines that you get gout. So sorry, you don't live in a world where that fantasy is real. I also want to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm just not.
So Dave, what is like one giant point that you hope the reader walks away from your book with?
Okay. One of them is that there is another consciousness in charge of you for about a third of a second all the time. And that some of the bad things that you take credit for doing weren't actually your decision. You can drop a lot of shame that way, and you can solve a lot of problems that way, understanding there's a second system inside you that's invisible that you can hack. Oh my God, that's liberating stuff. Right? That's called the meat operating system. And when I say a third of a second, by the time you're 18, when I snap my fingers, there's a delay time between when I snap my fingers and when you hear it. And you say, yeah, it takes a little time for the sound to get to me. But the reality, if I put electrodes on your head, one of my companies, 40 years as in, we do brain upgrades with electricity and electrodes. We measure brains for more than 1,000 top executives in the country. Wow. So this is real data. And a younger brain, there's a quarter second delay between when I snap my fingers and when their brain gets the first wiggle that a sound happened, and a little bit longer, they know what it is.
Wow.
But if you're 40 plus, it's likely a third of a second, because as brains age, they get slower unless they're hacked. So I still have a quarter second. I have an 18-year-old response time brain, but the average person listening is probably somewhere around a third of a second. Which means there's someone else messing with your perception of reality because they just erased a third of a second.
Wow.
Real time.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Do you see how big that is? What else are they erasing? It turns out, and having done a lot of 6 months of training with electrodes on my head to go deep on these systems, they're making all kinds of decisions for you and making you believe that those decisions were yours. I'm pretty sure that the last time you flipped that guy off in traffic, you didn't choose to flip him off. You just felt like you choose to. That aggressive thing came from the operating system. That time you reached for the Ben and Jerry's when you told yourself you wouldn't, and then you ate half the container, and then you're like, why did I do it? I'm a bad person. No, you were low energy, you were tuned out, and the operating system stepped right in and was like, oh yeah, calories. I like me some calories. And that happened, and then you feel guilty about it. So if you accept that that system exists, that's the same system that tells you whether you should make fat or muscle. That's the same system that tells you whether you're allowed to stay focused or distracted. That's the same system that tells you how good you're going to be at, I don't know, handling stress, how smart you're going to be. You can send it signals to make it do what you want. And when it does what it wants, it feels like you did it. And that is one of the most liberating things I've ever discovered in my life.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So a lot of people look up to you from a health perspective, from a biohacking perspective. They admire you. They admire your work. Who are people that you admire, that you learn from, and whether in this field or in life overall? And what makes that so?
My podcast, The Human Upgrade, has had more than 300 million downloads. I've interviewed more than 1,000 people who've done unusual things on there, including Nobel Prize winners, spiritual gurus, people who've excelled in their field. And I actually wrote a book a few years ago called Game Changers, where I looked at what 400 of them agreed on to figure out the commonalities amongst these high performers. And I used math and science to figure it out. I do not believe in following a single guru. I am what people call a cross lineage person. So I studied with grandmasters of Chinese energy medicine. I've done shamanic training. I've learned from a variety of people. I love the work of people like Gabby Bernstein. And Jack Canfield's a personal friend, and I hang out with the people who made The Secret, as well as neuroscientists and Navy SEALs and astronauts. These are people pushing the limits of what humans can do, the people who are evolving the most. So I learned from university researchers. I learned from people who are going out there doing functional movement, saying, God, I just figured out if I do these things, I transform this. What I'm looking for is masters. People who've really developed what looks to a normal person like superhero powers. And some of them they're not famous at all, but they're just amazing. I have a friend up on Vancouver Island. She's in her 60s and she runs 5 miles a day, which, by the way, I think is silly. In the book, I talk about the statistics of injury for that. But she can do it because she's one of the most gifted people on working on the fascia in your feet I've ever seen. And she can, when you walk in the door, she's like, oh, look, your right shoulder is a 1/4 inch higher than your left, and you're slightly pivoting this. I can't see any of that. This woman, she's like Neo from the Matrix, looking at ones and zeros when I walk in the door. Those are the people you learn from. And so I'm fortunate that some of the more interesting and energetically powerful or mentally powerful people in the world have sought me out because apparently I'm doing something interesting. When Rick Rubin emailed a few years ago and said, hey, can we have lunch? And I'm like, is this happening? Like what the heck? And Rick and I have communicated lots of times about various stuff. I mean, this is someone he just wrote a book on creativity, by the way. Everyone listening should look at Rick Rubin's book. But how could I not learn something from someone who learned how art works and has helped everyone from Johnny Cash to Madonna, and just, created the hip hop genre, one man. So that is a master. And I will learn from anything I can from Rick because he knows the things I don't. And same thing, there's one of 9 living grandmasters of the Chinese energy medicine form that protects the Emperor of China. One of those is a friend, right? So I can't tell you, I do a lot of spiritual work. I've just did a Joe Dispenza retreat, and I teach people spiritual work with computers at 40 Years of Zen. So it's not just the hard science. The people who think we're meat robots are actually doing a great disservice to humanity. So there's a spiritual side to being a high performer that's necessary. And that's why the last 2 chapters of Smarter Not Harder are about here's the stuff that gives you spiritual progress in less time. Because you can stop going to the gym. There's a better way. You're wasting time. Take the time you would have spent at the gym to meditate, but hurry, meditate faster. And you're going to free up so much time that you might do something amazing. And you might be the next Rick Rubin or the next guru. Because you were so lazy that you just did things that were easier instead of harder.
Have you found commonalities between either the actions or the thoughts of the people that have mastered their craft?
The people who have mastered their craft have honed their sense of awareness. We talked about the meat operating system and that gap of time and reality. It turns out that one of the things your operating system does is it's the first observer of reality, and it filters a whole bunch of stuff out, and it only shows you a tiny slice of what it picks up. These are people who have learned to tune all of the sensors in their body to focus on what they want to focus on so they can find it. and they can see it when others can't. And I just finished Rick's book yesterday, and he just writes about it so elegantly. And I've watched him do it in person, where there might be a new song or new music, and it's like every part in his body is just like the antenna array in the Matrix, and the bad things, they hear a little sound, like they stop and listen, or dog's ears, and like it was just like a half a second thing. And I talked with him about it when I interviewed him last, and they all have this for their field. And then there's a knowingness that comes from a true master, and it's hard to teach, but it can be taught. So it's hard to explain, but all of them have that in some way. Where a musician can pick up an instrument they don't even know, and within 5 minutes they can play reasonably well because they just know. Whereas I can pick up anything, I just sound like a kid on it, right? Then you look at this and you realize, how is it that a university researcher like Sachin Panda, who's a friend who has done a lot of work around circadian biology in the eyes, and I've been in his lab and looked at rat retinal cells, but how does he just know what it is and then prove it? I don't know, but I do the same thing. Some of the stuff I've written in my books, there's no study, and then 5 years later there's a study. It's because you can see how it has to work. Because it lines up. I did not start out with that. I am a computer hacker. I'm a network engineer. I worked at the company that held Google's first servers when Google was 2 guys and 2 computers. I was a co-founder and part of that company. I'm a nerd. Okay, I do not have any medical training, but I created the field of biohacking, and there are doctors. I lectured at 3,000 doctors at a time. Because I think different, and because I've achieved my own kind of mastery in a new field, and I know there will be biohackers 10 times better than me who come along because the field exists, and that's how it's supposed to be. So, long answer. I'm not very specific, but the best I can come up with.
No, I appreciate that very much. So, Dave, where can people get access to the book? When will it become officially available? How can people get their hands on it?
It'll hit the market February 28th.
February 28th.
Yep. All you've got to do is go anywhere you like to buy books. If you support a local bookstore, it turns out now you're guaranteed to go to heaven, because local bookstores, we need them in our world, because they're going to help you find stuff that algorithms never will. Especially now that you see what the government did to the algorithms over the last few years. Elon's been pretty transparent about that. So support local bookstores, and if not, buy it wherever you like to buy books. Smarter, Not Harder is the name. Awesome. And while you're at it, you could pick up a Danger Coffee at dangercoffee.com. Or you can open a biohacking lab. If you love the book, own and upgrade labs.com. That's how you do that.
I love it.
The world's changing, and it's changing fast, and you ought to be in charge.
You bet. Where's the best place for people to connect with you, follow your work? Is it Instagram? Is it your website?
I mean, all of my stuff is listed on daveasprey.com. And a lot of people follow me on Instagram. It's dave.asprey.
Great.
And when you go there, I just post all the stuff that matters to you. Like you said in the structure of the book, it's there to be actionable. It drives me nuts when you read a whole book and you kind of felt good that you read it and you didn't know what to do when you were done. It's not a good thing. When you're at the level I am, where 2 million hours a month of human life is consumed by my podcast, and probably this book will have at least 1 million hours of life. If I write stuff that wastes your time, I'm a mass murderer.
Yeah, I got you.
Everything I can do, I do as well as I can, because it's a very big mantle to carry. So that's why I appreciate followers. I appreciate people listening to this interview. I appreciate you interviewing me. And if people would do me the honor of ordering the book now instead of later, it'll help a lot of people find this knowledge.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, I mean, your strive for excellence and your strive to put out quality information, it bleeds through. It's so apparent. So thank you for all the work you're doing. Dave, the question we like wrapping up with for all of our guests is, what is your definition of health?
I would say health is what people ask for when they're really, really, really sick. Health is table stakes. And it's just the beginning of what's possible.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. Well, Dave, thank you so much. This was a fascinating conversation. I know our listeners are just going to be thrilled to have heard it. They're going to be psyched to read your book. I know I certainly was. So again, thank you for all of the work that you do. Everything that you share is really appreciated.
Thank you, Charlie. Have an awesome day. Appreciate you taking the time to interview me.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
Wow, was that an awesome interview or what? I mean, when Dave and I were sitting down talking, we had such a fun time going through his book, Smarter Not Harder, discussing so many of the concepts that are in it. So if you want to grab a copy, be sure to get yours on pre-order by going to daveasprey.com or pick it up wherever you find your books, whether that's online or in person. As Dave said during the interview, if you can support a small business, a small bookstore in the process, that definitely helps them out as you are going and purchasing Dave's book as well.
We have some exciting news coming up on February 26th, which is this coming Sunday. We are starting a brand new 1 workout away challenge called Fit and Flexible. We're going to be teaching you the principles of how do you strengthen your muscles and keep and build your flexibility. That is a thing that so many people talk about because we feel like they go in contrast of each other, but we're going to be exploring this and teaching you hands-on how to do this. If you'd like to get signed up for this program, we would love to join us, but you do have to do it before 12 a.m. on Sunday. Like, you have to do it before Sunday Pacific time. So we'd love for you to join us. All you need to do is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/OWA.
So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is feeling that they are putting so much effort into trying to build their health and to trying to lose weight, but they are not seeing the results from it? Share this episode with them so they can learn about some simple tweaks that they can start making with what they're doing on a day-to-day basis that can have a profound impact on the results they're getting and on their life overall. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.